a question, and I really feel like this is a prayer request too, from a friend of mine in the chat. We've seen this so much in ministry, especially when platforms come into play. A lot of ministers who, man, they get that eye for the younger women, especially when you get if you're married with kids and you've been with her for a long time, and there's new depths and new levels that God is bringing you to, and the wife or the spouse or the husband isn't really into it. They're kind of lost in there, but they're doing their duties at home. And then you have a woman or a man comes up who, especially with a platform, because you got all of this attention out of nowhere. Like, I've seen it a lot with Facebook ministries. It's the first young, beautiful girl that's in your inbox. They leave their wife and go to the new woman. And I got a friend of mine, and I know this is more than one, but people are struggling with this. They want to know what to do. How do they salvage their marriage, because they feel like God is calling them into ministry. God is calling them into really deep things. And some people, like, their wives are like ridiculing them and making fun of them, and, oh, you think that's God? And they just really aren't on board. What can they do to salvage that? And because I feel like the fleshly nature is like, yep, that's not the one for you. Go ahead and go with the younger woman. You know, you got kids, you got years invested. How do we get that voice to shut up, and how do we fix that marriage, man? I really think that people need to hear this.
Yep. Well, my wife and I may one day write a book on how to build a strong marriage. It's a subject that is of great interest to both of us. We've taken quite a bit of training and education and read books on relationships and marriage and boundaries and things of that nature. I have seen exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
When you get on social media and you have a good message and you connect with people, you start to grow an audience, you start to get a little popularity, and the first thing the enemy is going to do is start sending young chicks into your chat and into your private messages, sending you DMs, trying to derail what you're doing with a little side thing with some young girl or young guy or whatever. I have unfortunately parted ways with some people, not in the sense that we're not friends anymore, but I have kind of distanced myself from them a little bit, because they're engaging in that kind of behavior. They've been called out, and they're refusing to honor their marriage, basically. Let me just say that. So we're talking about relationships, and we're talking about a marriage. And when things are not going the way you want them to go in your marriage, there are two ways you can respond to that problem. You can either look outside your marriage, or you can look inside your marriage and try to identify the problems and fix it. Now, most of us guys are going to look outside the marriage. We're going to look at someone younger, someone who pays us a lot of attention, who fawns all over us and says we're just the greatest thing since sliced bread. Having been there a few times, I know what I'm talking about. So the problem is that we all have emotional needs. And if your emotional needs are not met by your spouse, you're going to have those emotional needs met by someone else. God has designed marriage as a way for man and woman to have their emotional needs met by their spouse, right? So men, generally speaking, have a series of emotional needs. Women have emotional needs that are different. There's some overlap, but in general, they prioritize things differently. Generalizations. One of the big problems is women don't understand the emotional needs of their husbands, generally speaking, and men don't understand the emotional needs of their spouses. When you don't meet the emotional needs of your spouse, they're going to go somewhere else to have their emotional needs met. That is why women will go and hang out with other women and talk for 2 hours, because on the list of emotional needs, women tend to like to talk about life process things externally and share meaningful conversation. A lot of guys aren't into these long conversations. They don't understand that their wife has a need to talk to them about the things that are going on in her daytime. So guys tend to shut their wives down, not realizing they're short-circuiting one of their emotional needs, right? Men tend to prioritize sex very highly in marriage. It's a high emotional need for most men. Not all men, but most men.
Mm-hmm.
Most women somehow don't quite get the message that it is an emotional need that most men have. I'm not saying women don't have emotional need for sex, they do, but men tend to prioritize it more highly, right? Men tend to prioritize going out and doing like athletic activities with a woman, going to a football game, going to a bar, or watching a football game at a sports bar, or playing tennis or whatever it is. Recreational activities with a female is a very high emotional need for men. It's very low for women. So why is it that guys will go and hook up with some chick at a gym or at a football game or at a bar? Because their wife isn't interested in going with them, but that's a high need for men. So the guys will go and they'll find some little side thing, doing something that meets one of their emotional needs. Now, all of that is to say that if I recommend this book really highly to people. It's called His Needs, Her Needs by Willard Harley. Harley is a Christian, but he wrote this book as a secular book because he didn't want people bashing each other with the Bible. But Harley is a Christian marriage counselor, and he wrote this book because he went through a period in his career as a marriage counselor where they just weren't seeing any marriages being saved. 25% success rate in marriage counseling is average. 75% of the people who go through marriage counseling end up getting divorced. Harley did some experiments, and his experiments ended up taking him down this road where he was identifying emotional needs for men and women. And he found out that there is a definite list of emotional needs that each person has. And if your needs are not being met in the marriage, you're going to go somewhere else to have those needs met. Now, the reason why a lot of men who have a successful ministry will go outside of their marriage is their wife is not actually meeting their emotional needs, right? Now, you tend to think it's the guy's fault. In actuality, there's always two people who are at fault in this. One, the woman doesn't know she's not meeting her husband's emotional needs because she doesn't know what they are, because she's never been taught about them, right? And the guy doesn't really know why he is flirting with the girls in the DMs in the chat. He doesn't understand that that is an unmet emotional need. And he's kind of being, run by, the evil spirits that are just playing up to that thing. So what I have found, and I was able to help my brother, a younger brother, save his marriage. His wife was on her way out the door. He's a businessman. He had a separate savings account where he was taking money, putting it into the savings account from his business, and he was going to strip clubs and using the money at strip clubs because his wife just wasn't really doing it for him anymore. I got her hooked with this book, His Needs, Her Needs. I gave her some CDs. She realized that she was the problem in the marriage. It wasn't him, it was her. You have to realize in the marriage that you're the problem, right? She realized she was disrespecting my brother. Now, most women don't understand that one of the top 3 emotional needs for men is respect. Men absolutely need to be respected in a marriage. It is just a very high emotional need. And the reason why guys will go outside their marriage and they'll flirt with women in the chat and in direct messages is because the women are showing them respect. And if you as a wife are not respecting your husband, he is going to find someone who will respect him. So my sister-in-law realized she was very disrespectful to my brother. She immediately changed her behavior, started respecting him, kind of identified what his emotional needs are, began to meet his emotional needs. He stopped going to the strip clubs. He told her about his private bank account. They got back together. They have been in love. They take vacations and trips together, and they have a really good marriage now because she was willing to admit that she was making some mistakes that was kind of pushing him away. Now, it could be the other way. Most guys are really dumb, and they don't understand that they are pushing their wives away. So there's the whole thing with marriage is you have to realize if there's a problem in your marriage, you're 50% responsible for finding out what the problem is and fixing it. And the other person, but what you don't do is you don't accuse the other person that they're not doing things right. You have to work on your own end of the problem. Yeah. Guys have to fix their problems. Women have to fix their problems. And when you fix your own junk and when you start living up to your own responsibilities, you'll find that the other person will start living up to their responsibilities. So that was probably a little bit longer answer than you wanted, but this is a subject I'm really passionate about.
No, me too. It's wisdom, man. There's and then also with the platform, it's like this instant, now I'm somebody again or whatever. I was listening to a podcast with James Hetfield from the band Metallica, and he talked about like on the road, he's like a god. They're like everybody screaming, man, you mean everything to me. Your music's changed my life. You know, you get all of these accolades, and then you get home and the kids are making fun of him, and he's just dad, you know, and you know he's got to fold laundry and all of this kind of thing. So it's like the balancing the platforms, man, because how many, like, I know we could just go down the list, whether they're celebrity preachers or pastors, but how many mighty men of God do we know in our own lives who are over the churches and they've done it? Like they weren't able to stand the test of time, and they've just kind of traded in their wife who helped them build that platform and build that ministry and birth some children, and they just pawn them off for like just a younger version of their wife or whatever the case is, you know. And so you got to be vigilant. You have to definitely know that it's coming.
What you really have to be is you have to be humble. You know, the reason why a lot of these people make these mistakes is they start believing the press clippings, and they really think they're all that in the bag of chips, and they really think they're greater than everybody else. And it's just a lack of humility. I pray every single day, Lord, keep me humble. And if I need really painful lessons to keep me humble, give me painful lessons, because pride, and these people just get wrapped up in pride.
Yeah.
And pride will destroy you faster than anything else.
That's good, man. And he knows what he's doing, right? He knows how to do it. He's the author and finisher. He's of our faith, and he's gonna, help us get into perfection. And,
that's cool. That's cool.
This is another subject on in that area though. But what about stalkers? If you enjoyed listening to this podcast segment, be sure to listen to the entire episode by clicking the video to your right. Also, we are on iTunes. You can download the MP3 versions as well. Be sure to subscribe for future episodes.